Will this work? Yeah, this actually worked. Cool. Hey, hi. I'm Yoav. I'm a web performance addict. I'm super excited to be here after I don't know how many years that Amelie has been bugging me to hop over. So yeah, happy happy to be here. Um, I don't know, but like potentially, those of you who've been around may remember me from a video from over a decade ago where I was working on the picture element in my backyard with this cat. What no one knows is that as part, like a lot of the scenes had to be dropped because of really inappropriate behavior by the cat. That's just yeah, it was licking itself to no end. But I've been working on browsers for a long, long while. Worked on browsers and browser engines as part of the Responsive Images community group, implementing picture and source set. I worked on browsers as part of my day job at Akamai, implementing a lot of features that Akamai then used to accelerate its customers' websites. Worked on browsers at Google on a very specific browser engine, if you may guess which one. And nowadays, I'm working on browser engines at Shopify. And one thing I found that is useful in my career is to have a mission that's guiding me throughout the years, and that mission is a faster web. I've been working on that for a long, long while. And another thing that I find very useful is to base my work and base my decisions on principles that essentially help me make more good decisions than bad ones, I guess. That's the um so a bunch of principles that I feel strongly about are long-term focus. That's where the mission part comes in. Alignment, and essentially making sure that your work is aligned with what your larger org needs. And when it comes to open source work, that essentially it means like having alignment means that you will be able to continue to do that work over time versus a one-off thing that just um that you will find yourself you don't have time to do over the long run. And then finally, tight feedback loops are extremely important in my view, being able to know whether the thing you're doing is the right thing or the wrong thing relatively fast. So one thing that I also strongly believe in is that the web belongs to everyone. That is, something that a lot of people say, not necessarily a controversial statement, but a logical conclusion from that statement is that the web doesn't belong to browser vendors. And that is something I strongly believed in before, during, and after working for a browser vendor. Uh, because the web belongs to everyone, the only way to ensure tight feedback loops, the only way to ensure alignment of the web with its developers and with its users is to make sure a lot more people are involved than just browser vendors. So this is why I'm co-chairing the WICG, the Web Platform Incubator community group. And essentially, my job at Shopify is to push the web platform to where Shopify needs it to be, which is relatively similar to what it was at Akamai, and in some ways also at Google. Um, so, what does Shopify need? A lot of things, but I'll yeah, sum it up to three different things just to keep things short. One of them is speed. So Toby Litke, our CEO, is not shy about the fact that fast software is a requirement to being world-class software, good software. Like, by definition, good software has to be performant, has to be fast. Similarly, security is also a prerequisite to great software, because software that users cannot trust is not softwares that they will use regularly. It has to be like, trust is paramount to great software. And finally, we would love frictionless web, or a web that helps users do what they are trying to do, and helps them do that. Um, so let's go through a few examples of those of efforts we've pushed over the last year and a half that I've been at Shopify. Um, One is, when it comes to performance, multiple import maps is an effort that we pushed from inception all the way to shipping. So let As part of our effort to move to faster build pipelines and move to ES modules in general, in order to make our sites faster, while at the same time more ergonomic to write, in particular for themes and theme developers, we ran into issues. We turned off JavaScript modules on our online store editor, and very quickly after that, Thomas Kelly, I don't know how many of y'all know him, but he's a vocal person, former Shopify, and immediately he noticed that this broke his theme in the online store editor. So why would turning on JavaScript modules break a theme? Well, as it turns out, the import map, like when it comes to ES modules and import maps, at least the way that things used to be, is that the import map has to be the first thing that is loaded on the page before any ES modules. And that was something we broke when we started loading ES modules at the top of that page in the online store editor. Also, there can only be a single import map in a page, and that is an issue that theme developers ran into when using import maps, where app blocks, which are essentially plugins, were also using import maps, and they broke the themes. So this is essentially, there was a struggle, and only a single, because storefronts are assembled from code that's written by multiple parties. There's our code, there's the theme developer's code, there's or the app block code, and the merchant's code. All of these parties, now only one of them can use an import map, and all of them have to coordinate who's the first one to load a module, and that is not something that's feasible. So we realized that this is an issue we'll have to address. So, look for, like, why are import maps important? Import maps essentially enable us to get rid of cache validation issues. So when, like, if we're looking at this particular module tree, we have the vendor script all the way to the bottom right. If that vendor script were to change, because all the scripts include a hash of their content, the depth2 and depth3 scripts now have to change their content, because they're referring to this vendor URL differently. And that also means that the main script has to change. So essentially, cache invalidation in JavaScript module dependency trees bubbles up. And import maps essentially enable us to decouple the script URL from the way that it's being imported, and enables us to have fixed names in when importing script. So enables us to break up this vicious not cycle, tag, but enables us to break that, and just when the vendor script invalidates, it is the only script that invalidates rather than all the tree above it. So import wraps are great. We want to enable theme developers to use them, but they were, impossible to put into practice. So um, looking over past issues, talking to Jake Archibald, who was involved in some of the past discussions and knew all the relevant people, we came up with a plan to essentially have a merge algorithm that enables us to have multiple import maps and have them load after past modules, but at the same time not override any of the rules that like essentially not introduce any rules that could influence past loaded modules, because module resolution has to remain stable over time, and not override any of the old rules from any older import maps and new maps that are being introduced. So essentially a merge algorithm that reconciles all this. And now it is shipped. We shipped it in Chromium 133. So Chrome and Edge mostly. And it is now shipped in Safari 18.4 starting from last month, roughly. And regarding Firefox, I'm not sure, but I think it's being, or like there's a positive position on it. I don't know where y'all are on the work, but I'm hoping so. Yeah, no pressure. And there's even a standard polyfill that came out of that effort, because we worked on, essentially I was um, picking up old issues by Guy Bedford, and he was also involved in the HTML PR review. And as a result of that, and he owns relevant polyfill, so he just implemented support for multiple import maps as part of that polyfill, which from our perspective enables us to actually ship this, because our support matrix goes back like beyond just Firefox. We also have older versions of Chromium and Safari to worry about, and we can't, because not having that support results in breakage. We wouldn't be able to ship this without working polyfill. So yeah, all this came together, and nowadays we are automatically injecting that polyfill when needed and using modules and import maps in our flagship theme that was released last week. So yeah, um, that is something I'm super happy about. Another, on the security side of things, how many of you are aware of what PCI DSS is? You are not alone in your pain. Yes. So it's PCI DSS is like the payment card industry data security standard, and effectively a standard enforced by credit card companies on pages that accept credit cards. And a recent change to that standard essentially enforces integrity checks on all the content that your website loads. So you need to have sub-resource integrity enforcement on all the scripts, essentially, not all the content, but all the scripts. And that is great in theory, and in practice was simply impossible. So one thing that we made possible and shipped on that front is integrity support for ES modules. Again, we care a lot about JavaScript modules, but there was no way to load them with integrity up until I think last summer, where we shipped the support for ES module, essentially adding an integrity section to import maps. So that enabled us to continue to use ES modules and make sure that we'll have integrity verification for them. But still, that didn't help us to, like, we can do that for our own scripts and know that they are indeed our own scripts. But there was no way for us to know what are all the scripts that a page is loading and make sure that no script without integrity that we did not anticipate uh, found its way in. Um, and that is another feature we added to content security policy. Essential, we call it hash reporting, where essentially we added directives that enable a report dash with an algorithm that is used for that reporting. And that reporting is being sent to an endpoint similar to other CSP related reporting API access. So that enables us to collect all the hashes from certain pages and be able to compare them to a list of known hashes that we know should be on those pages and trigger alarm bells if those don't match. And finally, a feature that is landing these days, so very fresh in Chromium 138, that is not yet made it to stable. And I'm hoping also WebKit soon. Like there's a PR up that is still waiting for review. Integrity policy, which is a feature we actually heavily collaborated on the design with Mozilla folks, with the Mozilla security team, because it aligned with some features that Mozilla is planning to work on related to overall integrity enforcement. But this essentially enables us to tell the browser, don't load any scripts that don't have an integrity check. And it also has a report only mode so that we can actually deploy that, because all these security features need a report only mode so that you would know that you won't break your own site once shipping the feature. But this essentially enables us to know that nothing is running on our site without us knowing. And finally, on the frictionless front, we care deeply about autofill. Autofill is super important in terms of our business outcomes. It's super important for users in terms of enabling them to actually do what they want to do. And we are seeing a huge increase in their completion rates when autofill is involved. At the same time, autofill is not perfect. Um, the current spec is extremely minimalistic. A lot of the logic is user agent specific. Um, there is significant misalignment of autofill in the real world with the autofill as specified. As specified, the assumption is that you have a static HTML form that autofill then fills, and everyone go about their way happy ever after. That is not how things work in real life because addresses are complex and different countries have different address structures and require different address fields. And you can't present a user with a form that will fit any address in the world. So what happens in practice is that some browsers have multiple passes of autofill, where they fill in the form, and then if the form changes within a certain timeout, they refill it again. Other browsers don't have that. And so what people who need autofill to work do is they have hidden fields, which browsers fill, despite the fact that it's not great from a privacy perspective, but browsers do fill them, and then people copy over the data from the hidden fields onto the new form that they generated that fits what the user actually needs. And all this is very hacky, very clunky, and not very safe. So we have thoughts on how that can be improved. Um, we have a proposal to create a JavaScript handler for autofill, where we will essentially register um, on a form and get an event giving us the data ahead of time, but not really like we will get the data, we will update the form, and then notify the browser that the form is now ready to actually be autofilled. So the browser remains in control of the filling process itself, and that enables it to have all kinds of like UI treatment that indicates to the user that this data was filled. Um, but at the same time, enable us to make sure that the form fits the data, and you know, and it doesn't ensure alignment between the form and the data, and also enable us to do those form updates in an async way, so that frameworks that wait a micro task to do dumb updates can actually work. And if we're relying on server data because the country in question is not one we anticipated in advance and we don't know what the form should look like, that should also work. So that's the proposal. It's still being heavily prototyped. It's not hasn't made it to any um, like not even the code hasn't landed yet anywhere. But we are excited about that and want to push it further. And there are a lot of other things. One of the places where I think we also have a lot of impact is by maintaining tight loops between browser teams that are working on features and the actual use of the features. So Mateusz talked about speculation rules and how we provided a lot of feedback to the team there. Compression dictionaries is another place where we provided a bunch of feedback. I'm still working on that. I should, yeah. Um, Signature-based SRI is another SRI-related feature that the Chrome team has been pushing, and we've been providing feedback on. Essentially, for the integrity checks, this will enable us, like even for dynamic content where you don't know the integrity ahead of time, you can essentially say, I don't know what the integrity will be, but I trust this entity to produce the right script, and having that script signed by the entity will give you some guarantees. And also FedCM, Federal Credential Management, web authentication, those are also features we've been providing a lot of feedback on. And also bug fixes. We have folks that are contributing bug fixes to WebKit in this particular example and elsewhere. So how is this relevant to your life? I hear like the Mozilla folks know what it's like to work on browser engines, but for the rest of you, like I hear you're thinking that, okay, it's great that you're working on that, but it's doesn't help me. Well, everyone includes you. and the web belongs to everyone. So um, I have a blog post up where I talk a bit about what it's like to contribute to a contribute a web platform feature to specifications and browsers. This is not something that should be limited to aspiring like people who want to work for browser vendors, but something that I think can also help y'all as web developers. This is something that can essentially getting to know the browser internals can help with whatever it is that you do on the web. So I think this is super useful for you as well as for the web as a whole. If you're working for an organization that doesn't have the bandwidth to do that work, but has spare budget, which is rare nowadays, but happens. There is the folks from Igalia are doing essentially open source consultancy and open source contract work that can help push features that you're interested in into browsers. And as part of the Rum community group, for example, we've had discussions about what features and what things different Rum providers can essentially like create a fund and fund the work on various features through Igalia and push that into the platform that way. And finally, there's a relatively new foundation for Chromium, where there's a essentially they're pushing projects for Chromium based browsers. I think a lot of that is more on the side of maintenance rather than feature work, but this is also an interesting project, an interesting foundation to keep track of in terms of pulling more involvement in the industry into browsers. Yeah, so just to sum it up, the web belongs to everyone. I don't know if you got that, but yeah. Shopify is working on some cool shit. And you can too. And with that, thank you.